Eric DeGatti here from One Human Performance, and today we're going to talk about some of my favorite drills to create full body power using the medicine ball. Now we're going to show you a series of throws, and let's start by talking about the medicine ball itself. This is my personal favorite, this Dynamax ball. You can get them through Perform Better, and I like the Dynamax because they're soft and they're pretty easy to grasp. They will take a pretty good beating, and it's safe to use, slamming against the wall or down into the floor, and they'll hold up real well. The first mistake people make, though, is they get too heavy of a ball. Remember, we're talking about power, not strength. The difference is that there's a time element. This thing needs to move fast if I'm going to generate power and work on my rate of force production. I can't get that with too heavy of a ball. So don't try to be a hero and get too big of a ball. Use something usually about 6 pounds for most of my male athletes, and for my female and younger athletes, I'm using around 4. Okay. Before we start, a couple principles for all the throws that we want to cover. Number 1, because this is power, and most of the times when we're generating power in a baseball swing, a golf swing, we are not doing that in rapid fire fashion. We are having separate explosive events happening. So I always say I want each repetition we do to be a separate violent episode. So when I throw a ball, it's not rapid fire. For conditioning, that's a whole nother thing. What we're looking for is to make each rep, I always say instead of doing a set of 5, we're doing 5 sets of 1. So make each one separate and explosive. The next thing is don't underestimate the power of your breath. Anybody that studied martial arts understands if you watch a great trained martial artist, or if you watch a boxer when they throw a punch, it's a fast, explosive breath, because that creates pressure within the abdominal cavity, creates stabilization and a platform to create strength from. So when we throw the ball, I always want it to be a fast, explosive breath every single time out. Okay? We're also going to talk a lot about, in each throw, about your power angles, about specific positioning to align you to create the most power as well as absorb the most force in the cases of deceleration in some of the throws. Okay, our first drill we're going to do is a rotational throw. We have a couple different rotational throws that we're going to show you. The first one up front is pretty basic. We're going to set into a good athletic stance. I want your weight into the arches of your feet, knees unlocked, hips back so we're loaded into your hips, and a nice arch in your back. We're going to hold the ball underhand with a carriage grip. Okay, now from here, the key is that how we utilize our hips. With all these drills, our emphasis is connecting the foot through the hip and out through the hand, which pretty much applies to just about any athletic endeavor. So once I get here, I need to load up. To load up, I'm going to load back away from the wall. Now, if you notice, this knee turns in as I turn my chest away. That, in effect, will help load this hip. Okay? So this closes off, this opens up, and then it's going to be the reverse of that when we create power. So I'm going to load up here, and then as I throw, I'm going to drive off of this leg, turn, and the key is not to think of squishing the bug like they teach little leaguers, but a good hitting instructor will teach you that you have to drive your knee to the target. So I'm going to go here and load up, and I'm going to drive this knee towards a target. So I get here, load up, breathe out, and throw it into the wall. So again, load, get those hips here, release. Another common mistake is that I lunge forward. I want to stay over a long axis here. So if you saw it from the side, it's here and it's here, and you notice that I stayed long through here. I did not lose balance and drift or fall forward or backwards. I'm balanced and I rotate over this spindle. If you're a rotational athlete, you're going to be very dominant to one side in most cases, meaning if you're a right-handed hitter, it's going to be much easier to go from right to left than it is from left to right. What I'll always say is to start with your non-dominant side, because there will be some carryover, plus that'll help balance out a little bit. And sometimes I'll even do a few extra reps to the tougher side. This next drill is going to be our first step takeoff. So if you're looking for that first step explosiveness, this is a great way to teach that. We're going to set ourselves up into a staggered athletic stance. So we still have our arch in our low back so we can load into our hips and sit. We're unlocked here. And the key here is what we want to do is load the ankle. I use that cue quite a bit, and what I mean by that is if you had cleats on, I want your back cleat of your front foot out of the turf. You can see that's going to engage the calf a little bit. You're up on the power pad of your foot. I'm the same way on my back leg, so I'm spring loaded and ready to go. From here, I'm gonna hold it by its side in tight with my shoulders packed and ready to go. And from here, I'm gonna explode out, and it's a single step, and I'm gonna propel myself, and I'm gonna feel like I'm gonna smash my face into the wall if I do it right. So I'm gonna get here, and with everything I got, I'm gonna sit back, load those hips, the ankles are already loaded, and I'm gonna go from here, breathe out strong, and jump out. I wanna accelerate and jump out. If you get somebody who's really skilled in teaching the 40, they'll tell you almost to leap that first stride to cover as much ground as possible. Same concept here, is we're gonna load those ankles, load those hips, get everything here, and explode, and don't throw the ball to the wall, throw the ball through the wall. There. Okay, our next throw is going to be working top to bottom, high to low, and we're going to be working from somewhere either the height of the shoulder to above overhead, depending on the athlete's mobility and stability going up overhead. We don't want to cause any impingement with this, so if there's any pinching in the shoulder, you need to bring that level down, as well as backtracking to figure out why you have some pinching in your shoulder. Okay, this is great for throwing athletes. It teaches you to connect and get that extension to load to come through here. All right, and what this is going to be is a 3-step process. So I'm going to alternate which leg I'm going with, and it's going to be, if I'm going left foot step, it's going to be a left, right, left throw. Okay, now notice that last step I came up with my knee up here. That's going to help me load. When I get my knee up, I'm going to come up and I'm going to get some extension through this hip. Now remember, we talk about hip extension, is that hip extensions, A, it's only about 10 degrees, so it's only about that much. And B, that is hip extension. That is back extension. We don't want back extension. We want to be here, load that hip, and then snap through. So we want to be building athleticism as we get closer to the wall. What that means is I want to start slow and gradually build up like a plane taking off. Christian Wonders, who's the pitching instructor up at Cressy Performance, does a great job of explaining this in the pitching motion, and that a great pitcher increases their speed and athleticism as they go through their windup and get to the release point. So let's watch it full time. So if we went here and we went right, left, right, I'm going to step right, left, up, and I'm releasing down and coming down and through the wall. So I'm aiming just below knee height. One more time. It is going to be right, left, and remember, I'm breathing out explosively as I release. So far, all of our throws have been projecting forward. This one's going to be projecting back and focusing more on extension. Explosive hip extension, not all that different from what you would see in a broad jump or even a kettlebell swing, except the difference being here is we're going to involve the ankle and get up onto our toes. So what you're going to do here is set up into like a deadlift position, where we're going to set the ball here where I have my chest out, my butt out, and an exaggerated arch in my back. Now what we're going to do from here is release up overhead and get up onto your toes, so we have triple extension at the ankle, the knee, and the hip. I'm going to release overhead, and I'm looking to hit the wall about 6 to 12 feet above the height of my head, okay, behind me. What I also want to do is create as much explosion as possible, so I'm going to feel almost as if I'm going to fall or jump forward when I do it, okay? The last piece is I will have a little counter movement to get it going. So if I'm set here, and depending on the athlete's range of motion, I will either come down and actually tap the ground, or at least just get a little counter movement to get it started. So we're going to set here, hands at the side, chest out, butt out. I should feel some stretch in my hamstrings and my butt. I should not feel my low back at any point. Okay, we're going to go from here. We're going to generate force and throw and release. Notice that jump forward as you go, because I'm getting up onto my toes and accelerating everything I can forward and going through with the release, which obviously you can't do when you're doing a kettlebell swing. The only thing to watch for here is if you throw it and you give it a good shot off the wall, make sure you don't get caught in the back of the head with the ball when it comes back. Our last drill here, we're circling back around and going back into rotation, but this is going to be a transition with rotation not just in the transverse or the rotational plane, but we're also going to look into transmitting force across side to side in the frontal plane. And so what we're going to do here is very similar to that first throw that we did, except now we're going to add a little more athleticism to it. As we talked about in that overhead throw previously about building athleticism and speed as we get to the end of the throw, that's what we're looking to do here. So now what we're going to do is set up here with our hands at our side, because this is going to be more of a push generating, connecting hand to hip. I'm gonna now do a crossover step, where if I'm facing this way doing a right-handed throw, I'm gonna step behind with my right leg, and I'm gonna take the ground and visualize pushing it that way, drive, and then when I throw, I'm going to turn and push, and my energy now is gonna continue through the wall. Almost, I'm gonna feel as if I'm going into the wall again, and I'm gonna explode out and continue my direction that way. So I'm gonna start here. I'm gonna step behind and increase my speed as I go. So it's gonna be here, same athletic stance as before, step behind, and go there. So once again, set, behind, drive. Now these certainly aren't all the drills that we use, but these are some of my favorites because on my checklist for building athleticism, it covers a lot of bases. We're working on a single leg, we're working in a staggered stance, we're working in an open stance, we're transitioning from one to the other. We're working front and back and side to side and in rotation and transitioning from one to the other. We're working with a power and speed element that's safe. It's also something that is not too physiological taxing, so you can get a lot of work done and you can do it quite often without beating up your body.